She laughed and said, "Find someone else, then." I smiled. "Already did." What happened? When she met my new girlfriend was the perfect payback. Her laugh wasn't soft or nervous. It was sharp, dismissive, filled with the kind of arrogance that slices straight through the chest. I had just finished telling her how much her attitude had been wearing me down. How the late nights, the constant texting with her so-called friends, the sarcasm and coldness were killing me slowly. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't angry. I was tired. Tired of being treated like I was nothing but an option she kept around out of convenience. And her response was to laugh. She leaned back on the couch, phone still glowing in her hand, and said it like she was daring me. "Find someone else, then." Her smirk told me she didn't believe for a second that I would. She thought I was trapped, too in love, too loyal to ever leave. In her eyes, I was weak. She thought her attitude was untouchable, that I would take it no matter how much it broke me. But for the first time, something inside me didn't crack. It shifted. I felt the ache in my chest, the sting of betrayal in my gut, but I didn't let it show. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't ask her how she could treat me this way, after everything I had done for her. I simply let a smile spread across my face and said the words that shocked even me. "Already did." For a moment, her smirk faltered. She tilted her head, waiting for me to admit I was joking, to backtrack, to beg again. But I didn't. I just let the silence stretch between us. Inside, though, I was replaying everything that led to this point. The countless times she mocked me for being too sensitive. The way she rolled her eyes whenever I told her how much her indifference hurt. The sarcastic comments she dropped in front of her friends, making me look like a fool for loving her too deeply. The nights I stayed awake, waiting for her to come home, only for her to stumble in hours later with flimsy excuses and laughter that didn't belong to me. I remembered the dinners I planned that she dismissed with a shrug, the trips I suggested that she said were boring, the long talks I tried to have that she brushed aside with a few distracted nods. Every attempt I made to love her, she treated like a burden. My loyalty, my effort, my heart, it was all just a joke to her. But not anymore. That moment became the breaking point. Her words, meant to cut me down, became the very rope she hung herself with. She thought telling me to find someone else was power, but what she didn't know was that power had already shifted. I didn't have to prove her wrong with rage or arguments. I didn't need to shout or throw her past in her face. I only needed those two words, "already did." And deep down, I knew life itself would make sure she understood just how real those words were. She just didn't know it yet. Looking back now, the warning signs had been there all along, like red flags I kept convincing myself were nothing more than my imagination. She mocked me constantly, little jabs that were disguised as jokes, but cut deep every time. "You're too clingy. You're too sensitive. You're always jealous." She said those things with a smirk, like she was pointing out my flaws for fun. I laughed along sometimes, pretending it didn't hurt, but inside it ate away at me. Her phone was always buzzing, notifications at midnight, at 2 in the morning, when she thought I was asleep. I'd roll over and see her with the faint glow on her face, smiling at the screen like it was the most precious thing in her world. When I asked, she brushed it off. "Just friends," she'd say. But the same friends she swore were harmless were the same ones she texted nonstop while sitting across from me at dinner. And then there were the girls' nights. At first, I wanted to believe them. I told myself everyone needs their space, everyone deserves time with friends. But when girls' night became every other night and she returned home smelling like cologne that wasn't hers, the truth became impossible to ignore. I was just too scared to admit it. I thought of all the sacrifices I made, the patience I gave her, the nights I stayed awake worrying, the days I swallowed my own needs just to keep her happy. The second chances I handed over like candy, hoping she'd realize my love was worth something. I poured myself into her, and still she painted me as the problem. "You're controlling," she'd say. "You're insecure." She turned her betrayals into my flaws, her distance into my paranoia, and for too long I believed her. But somewhere along the way, I stopped chasing. The arguments grew shorter. The explanations I used to beg for, I let them slide. I stopped waiting up for her to come home. I stopped planning special nights that would only be ignored. I stopped reaching for her hand when she pulled it away. My silence wasn't defeat. It was distance. A distance that I created not out of weakness, but out of survival. While she thought she was in control, while she believed I was still trapped in her game, I was already preparing the next chapter of my life. I started spending more time on myself, on my work, on my friends, on the parts of me I had neglected while drowning in her chaos. I found myself smiling again, not because of her, but in spite of her. She thought she had the power, that she could push me away and still have me crawling back at her feet. But the truth was, with every cruel laugh, every late-night secret, every mocking word, she was pushing me further toward freedom. And while she was busy building her lies, I was quietly building my escape, one that didn't include her anymore, one where she would no longer have the chance to mock me because she would no longer matter. The storm inside me had been raging for so long that I forgot what calm even felt like. For months, maybe years, I lived in a cycle of doubt, anger, and pain. I loved her, God. I loved her more than I should have, but her love was like a poison, sweet in the beginning and deadly in the end. Letting go of her wasn't easy. It broke me in ways I didn't think I could recover from. But when the storm finally began to settle, clarity came with it. I realized I had been holding on to someone who never truly cared to hold on to me. The heartbreak was sharp, but beneath it was relief. Relief that I no longer had to explain myself, no longer had to beg to be noticed, no longer had to fight for scraps of affection. It was strange at first, the quiet of my new life without her constant chaos. But in that quiet, I found something I had forgotten: myself. I started healing in silence. No dramatic speeches, no announcements, just small steps every day. I poured myself into my work, staying late not because I wanted to avoid her, but because I wanted to build something for me. My career began to grow in ways it never had, when all my energy went into keeping her happy. I reconnected with friends I had pushed away, people who actually valued me, who laughed with me without judgment, who reminded me of who I used to be before her shadow fell over me. And most importantly, I started rebuilding my self-worth. I looked in the mirror and for the first time in a long time, didn't see someone weak or insecure. I saw someone who had endured, someone who had given everything and was still standing. My silence was no longer a cage. It was freedom. It was the foundation of a stronger version of myself, one that no longer bent under the weight of her contempt. And then, slowly, as if the universe was rewarding my patience, I met someone new. She wasn't flashy. She wasn't playing games. She was kind. She listened to me, not with half an ear while scrolling on her phone, but with genuine interest. When I spoke, she didn't mock me. She didn't call me insecure. She valued me, respected me, looked at me like I mattered. The contrast between the two women was staggering. Where one saw my loyalty as weakness, the other saw it as strength. Where one laughed at my love, the other cherished it. Where one drained me, the other filled me. It was then that I realized my silence hadn't been weakness at all. It had been preparation. It had been the soil where something better could grow. She thought my detachment meant defeat, but in truth, it was the foundation of my comeback. I had once thought I couldn't live without her, but standing in my new reality, with peace in my chest, strength in my heart, and someone beside me who actually valued me, I finally understood. I was always better off without her. My new girlfriend was everything my ex had never been. Supportive in ways that felt genuine, kind in moments that mattered most, and above all, honest. There were no games, no hidden smiles. At a glowing screen, no excuses that made me feel like I was always second place. With her, I didn't feel like I was fighting for scraps of love. I felt like I was finally seen, finally heard. She didn't just tolerate my presence, she valued it. I started rebuilding myself in her presence, not because she fixed me, but because she reminded me I was never broken to begin with. I picked up hobbies I had abandoned. I went out with friends without feeling guilty. I laughed more, slept better, and carried myself differently. For the first time in years, I wasn't surviving a relationship. I was thriving in one. The contrast between the two women was so stark, it almost made me laugh sometimes. Where my ex once mocked me for being too sensitive, my girlfriend called it compassion. Where my ex rolled her eyes at my plans, my girlfriend encouraged them. Where my ex drained me dry, my girlfriend filled me with peace. Meanwhile, my ex's confidence began to crack. At first, she kept her facade. She strutted around online, still posting about how independent she was, still laughing with friends who encouraged her pride, but I saw it. The change in tone, the shrinking circle of people around her. Friends who once cheered her rebellion started drifting away. They had lives of their own, and her drama no longer entertained them. The games she played no longer worked. She tried sending me mocking texts, pretending she still had the upper hand. Hope your new girl isn't as insecure as you? Or, bet you still check her phone? I read them in silence, and for once they didn't cut me. They just sounded hollow, desperate. Her arrogance was cracking. The pride she once shouted with was thinning into something quieter, something closer to regret. And then the tone shifted. The messages came later at night. The mockery faded into something softer. Hey, just wondering how you're doing. Remember when we used to... I miss talking sometimes. She tried to cloak her loneliness in casual words, but I could feel the desperation bleeding through. She was starting to realize the truth. The man she had once mocked, belittled, and treated like a backup plan was no longer there for her. While she stumbled, I kept climbing. My silence was still my weapon. I didn't reply. I didn't give her the satisfaction of knowing whether I even cared. Because I didn't. Not anymore. The tension built quietly between us, like two worlds moving on a collision course. She was unraveling, sensing she was losing her grip, while I was living a life she could no longer touch. She had laughed when she told me to find someone else. She never believed I would. But now the day was coming when she'd have to face the truth that I already had. And nothing could prepare her for the moment our paths finally collided. The day she finally met my new girlfriend is burned into my memory like a scene from a film. It wasn't planned. It wasn't staged. Life just brought it together in a way that felt almost poetic. I was out with my girlfriend, walking hand in hand, laughter between us easy and natural. It was a simple evening, nothing dramatic. Just dinner and a quiet stroll. And then, like fate had been waiting for the perfect moment, she appeared. My ex. The same woman who once laughed in my face, who mocked my pain, and told me to find someone else. Her steps froze when she saw us. At first, she tried to wear that same smirk she always carried, that mask of arrogance she used to shield herself. But her eyes betrayed her. They darted to our hands clasped together, to the effortless way my girlfriend leaned into me, to the smile on my face that she hadn't seen in years. The air between us turned heavy, charged with everything unspoken. For the first time, she realized I hadn't been bluffing. I had found someone else. I had moved on. And not in anger or spite, but in a way that looked so natural, it stung her more than any cruel words could have. Her smirk wavered, and I saw the panic flicker across her face. She opened her mouth, tried to form words, but nothing came out at first. Finally, a shaky laugh escaped, brittle and broken. "So, this is her?" she asked, her voice carrying both bitterness and disbelief. I didn't answer right away. I didn't need to. My silence was already speaking volumes. My girlfriend, kind and unaware of the storm brewing, offered a polite smile, but my ex couldn't return it. Her face twisted, her pride crumbling right there in front of us. Then came the desperation. She started talking fast, her voice trembling under the weight of words she should have said years ago. "I didn't mean what I said that night. You know I was just angry, right? You know I didn't mean to push you away." Her eyes glossed over with tears, her tone shifting from arrogance to pleading. She reached for me as if her touch could undo everything. But I didn't flinch. I didn't shout. I didn't throw her past back in her face. I simply stood there, calm, detached, untouchable. Because the truth was, she had already proven her words. She didn't need me, and now I didn't need her either. She begged, but her voice sounded hollow. She tried to laugh it off again, but the sound cracked under the weight of her regret. And as she stood there unraveling, I finally understood what real closure felt like. It wasn't in revenge, in shouting, in gloating. It was in silence, because silence had become my loudest answer. Silence was my final wall. She thought telling me to find someone else was a weapon, but it became the very reason I found my peace. The sweetest revenge wasn't revenge at all. It was walking away with happiness she could no longer touch, while she was left holding nothing but the bitterness of her own words.